All right, so that's me. My name is Yulei Liu. I'm a solutions engineer from Hashicorp. I'm based in Sydney. I've been here for about 4 years, so I've seen the growth of the company. I got the privilege to work with a lot of the community members and enterprise customers. So that's just about me. Now today, we're going to talk about Waypoint. So if you haven't heard of Waypoint, that's fine. Hopefully, I'll take you through, and after the session, you will learn what Waypoint is about, and maybe you will have an interest to learn about the product. That's all I want. All right. So this session is going to be breaking into sections. We will have an overview of the product, a live demo. Maybe we'll talk about roadmap items that you can see from the product point of view, and we will actually invite you to a private beta program for Waypoint. Then if we have time, we'll have some questions and answers. All right, first, what is Hashicorp? You may not know Hashicorp, but Hashicorp is actually a leading cloud automation company. So we help enterprises to provision, secure, connect, and schedule their workload on public cloud, regardless of where the cloud is, which platform it is. So on the right side, you will see a list of products. I can confidently say you go into any company, regardless of size, as long as they have some IT, have some public cloud, there is a very good chance that they will be using at least one of these tools. So it's super, super popular in DevOps community. Before we drill into Waypoint, I actually want to bring back the story a little bit. If we think, I'm assuming here that everyone knows about Terraform and the tools we're having. That's some of the most popular tools. I just want to highlight the reason why people like Terraform. If we think about it, Terraform is actually a unified IAC platform, IAC tool, to help you provision anything on any cloud in a unified workflow, whether it's GitHub, Git Actions, or Terraform Cloud, or even from command line. It's all the same, right? We're using same workflow, adopting different Golang plugins, being able to provision anything. And that is one of the reasons why we are so popular. The second tool, Packer. If you know Packer, maybe you can raise your hand. Packer is one of the most popular tools that's building golden images for any cloud, whether it's public cloud or private cloud, whether it's VMware or even OpenStack on AWS, Azure, GCP, doesn't matter. Again, it's the same story. We have a unified workflow that you can provision or build golden images anywhere, regardless of the target system. Same story, the third popular tool, Vault. Vault is a secret management and data protection platform, which does secrets management, encryption as a service, being a key management service, and stuff like that. But again, using a unified workflow for any cloud. It doesn't matter which public cloud. Now, you might have grasped some idea that Hashicorp, with all these three products, the reason we are popular is we try not to be a point solution that resolve a particular issue. We're trying to unify a workflow that is applicable to any place. So that actually comes back to the story. Hashicorp built Waypoint to do exactly the same thing. Now looking at this stack of tools, companies adopt Hashicorp tools because they use Hashicorp tools as an abstraction layer between the user and the public cloud or private cloud. Right? The idea of having this abstraction layer is that you can have unified workflow using a community or Hashicorp self-built plugins, being able to provision anything, secure anything, connect anything on any cloud. It doesn't matter whether it's traditional workload on public cloud or Kubernetes, anything. Same thing, the developers, actually, it's one of the dream, like if you could have a unified workflow from source code till it's being provisioned, till it's being released, regardless of the target system, that would be, I would say, dream come true, right? So if this happens, that would be a really good tool. You increase your efficiency, reduce your cost, reduce your risk along the whole process. So this is what Waypoint is. Really, Waypoint is a tool designed for DevOps engineer because our founders are DevOps engineers themselves. They've been in the industry a long time. They learned the pain points of developers and stuff like that. So they come up with these ideas that hopefully this tool will address some of your pain. Now, Waypoint offers a consistent workflow for developers so that you can build your applications, deploy your application, release your application in a unified way. Simple workflow that works across every place, regardless of the target system. Of course, that works for operators as well. So the idea is to provide an abstraction. Now, if we look back into the story, Terraform is for provisioning infrastructure, Packer is for building image, Vault is for security, Console is for connect. These are all siloed tools. Ideally, we want to have a higher layer of abstraction that will help you to manage everything. So hopefully we will see how this comes to true in my demo. Now, Waypoint, on a high level, abstract the entire stack into one single workflow. It helps you to build, compile your application, get into some kind of artifacts, and then deploy into the targeted system, whether it's serverless or whether it's Docker, whether it's Kubernetes, or even just EC2 instance. And we then do release and some kind of observation. Regardless whether you use Hashicorp tools or any other tools. So that's the idea. Now, hopefully, if we then abstract our way, this is Hashicorp Waypoint. We look at the workflow, the entire workflow, into three major pieces. The first one is build, basically building some artifacts from your source code, whether it's packaged into jar file or compiled into Golang binary, or build a Docker container, right? So build some kind of artifacts. And then after that, you actually need to deploy it into a platform, or let's say if it's not a platform, it's just a VM, it's fine as well. And after that, once everything is fine, we actually release it to the public so that we can take in traffic. That's the main three stages of Waypoint. Whenever you're trying to build something from source code until it's released and released to open public. This is the three main steps. And obviously there are something missing, for example, testing. For example, deploying of infrastructure as part of the step. But we will talk about that later. On the top level, this is the three steps. All right, so when we mention Waypoint, if you are familiar with Terraform or Vault or Packer, I'm going to use some of the language here. So what is Waypoint? Waypoint number one, it's a command line, it's a binary. It's a binary that can act both as a server and as a client. With that binary, you can interpret some config files, basically how you define the build process, the deploy process, and the release process. On the right hand, you have seen some kind of screenshots. The second is Waypoint is a set of HCL, just like Terraform code, just like Terraform for your infrastructure. It defines like how do you want to build, where do you want to build, how do you want to deploy, and when do you want to release. As you can see from the screenshot, we actually using a cloud native pack to build a Docker container and then send it to Docker as a registry. At the end, we're going to use Helm to do a deployment into Kubernetes. Sometimes this looks really simple. You might think this is too simple. It's like glorified, but we will see some of the real code. You can get a sense of it. And also, when we talk about Waypoint is also a GUI. It's like Vault. Yeah, the same binary hosts the internal database that let you know the past, the history of your deployment. Where is it, how it went, and which stage is it in. So you can go actually log into a GUI and check the status. And also, you can actually do an execution like a remote shell. If you run Kubernetes, kubectl exec is very good, right, for you to be able to debug your container instance. But that's not available on other platforms. Let's say a serverless function, right? But we do provide that as part of Waypoint function and also collect logs. So we're going to have a look at the details. So I have a little demo. Let's see how the demo go. I prayed for this to work, to the demo god. I'm not 100% sure. Let's see. All right, so what you are seeing here is a Waypoint GUI, like command line. So the command line is very easy. Let me show you some code. So you have a waypoint.hcl file, which defines the build, release, and deploy. And in the same directory, I actually have a Node.js application. So I have started the application already. You can see some of the examples. So you will see this is EC2 ECS service. So we're going to do some live change to the application and see how we go. So we're going to edit this Node.js. We're going to add some, so let's say change some text here. We save the code. Now you have changed your source code. Now you need to do actually a build and deployment. So let me do, so I'm going to build locally first, just to a Docker container. So you can see I have my application as local. So after this, while this is building, let's have a look at the config file. So this is our application. That's Docker Node.js web. You might notice that the command line I typed is for Docker web, Node.js web. It's very simple. So by default, it will use a cloud native package to build the application, the Node.js application. And then I'm going to deploy to local Docker. So there is no settings, really. We actually take a very educated guess. So the default value would just work fine. So with that, the application, actually, you can see it's deployed, right? So you can see release version 10 has been deployed. We end up with a Docker container. So if we, let's look at this container. So it's being made available on this pod. So let's visit the local host. So hopefully you can see that this has been changed. So application gets delivered really, really fast. Now, assuming that you've done your testing and you validated this on your local instance, you're ready to deploy into, let's say in this case, ECS cluster. So that's the next step, Waypoint. So while it's building, let's look at the second set of code. This is another application. Essentially, you can think this as a different stage. This is, let's say, call this production. Yeah. So we still use the same cloud native pack to build this Docker container, and we send it to a ECR registry. Of course, I have my credentials all done beforehand. And then I have a deploy. Basically, you get to select which region, how many memories, and stuff like that. So I'm just using the basic settings. OK, now this is creating. We can see that ECS service has been created. It's deleting the previous registration. And then at the end, it gives us an URL. This is the release URL. But before we see that, before we go into it, let's have a look at the GUI. What does it look like? So this is Hashicorp cloud platform, where you will have an access to a Waypoint as a service. Essentially, that's the server component. So I have a project, that's Cine DevOps Talks. I have these applications for different kind of target. Say, for example, I have a Docker. This is the one we just deployed, version 10. You can then, into version 10, you can see the build process. It's done by Cloud Native Pack, the release process, and the logs of the building, the release. And And then if we go back to the ECS, you'll get the same thing. Right? So stuff is deployed. You will see the history of the build, the releases, and the logs. Now, if we go back to the deployment, we have a URL. If we open up this URL, now stuff pops up. We can see the updated application has been updated, it has been released. We're actually having a unified workflow targeting two of our targets. That's a local Docker server and then a remote ECS. This works across the board. It doesn't matter whether it's Lambda, Google Cloud Run, Kubernetes, anything, right? Hopefully this will make your life much easier as a developer. This is kind of like the first tool Hashicorp designed for developers. And we do have other tools that's coming. All right, hopefully you see the 3 stages. Now, it is actually very obvious through this 3 stage, you can see this is an highly abstracted stage. This is not enough for production environment. Right? We can see many, many holes. For example, there is no testing. There is no infrastructure provisioning. So I'd like to share some of our thinking around the products, the future. So right now we are working on some of the key stuff. Number 1 is custom pipeline, meaning you can add extra steps. Say, for example, after I build the image, maybe send to artifacts, wait for some vulnerability scan before I do the next step, right? Stuff like that. Runner management. Right now, my demo is purely driven from a command line. But sometimes like command line works because my command line can access my Docker locally and can access ECS directly from my internet. But there are production environments where there is no reachability, for example, right? So remote runner would be an agent that you can install in your targeted system, and it will then try to orchestrate and automate the whole thing. Also, operational visibility or observability. Of course, once you have this in production, the health of the deployment, the build, the release becomes very important. You don't want anything to fail. So we will be exposing all the metrics for your favorite tool, monitoring tool. And also Vault integration. As part of the deploy process, we will be able to grab some static or dynamic secrets and inject into your deployment phase so that the entire application is secure, right? So integration with Vault. Also, we were trying to do GitHub application integration. Right now, if you want to drive this, you can use GitHub Actions. But in the future, in HCP, we will have GitHub application integration, which means if you're trying to do a pull request, something will happen, maybe do a build, and when you do a merge, the whole process will happen, maybe build, deploy, and release. And you will have buttons or commands that you can actually run to control this process. And also, in the next phase, we will be developing infrastructure management, possibly via a Terraform plugin. Yeah, say, for example, I want to deploy this stuff, but I need to stand up a test Kubernetes before I can deploy this in the test environment. Right? It makes sense, and that Kubernetes cluster will be teared down after my test. Right? And also, we will have application promotion, like different stages where you can promote from dev to test to production, to staging to production. And obviously, we will have access control tightly integrated with your single sign-on solution, or your corporate single sign-on. And also, we will open up the public plugin registry. Essentially, if you have worked with Terraform and Vault, one of the reasons it being so popular is we have a wide community. We get helps from developers from all over the world. They contribute to the code. The same story will happen. You will be able to build your own plugin using the SDK we provide, with the SDK and framework we provide. Later, we will add more governance and policy, more enterprise-y feature. So right now, we have 2 flavors of Waypoint. The first one is Waypoint OSS, just like Terraform, Vault, and Packer. You host by yourself. You run Waypoint as a server. Or you could use HCP Waypoint, which is a hosted, managed environment for you. Then here comes the private beta program. Until the end of September, we are running a private beta program where you can request, and depends on the need, our development team will actually allocate some resources to work with you to set up your HCP Waypoint and say how that can help you. After that, we will open into open beta. Anyone can sign up an account onto HCP and get a free Waypoint server and start playing. I think that's a good thing. Maybe we can wrap up early. If you have any interest, search Learn Waypoint. You will see how you can deploy and use Waypoint to deploy into anything. Thank you.